Once the most powerful man in the known world, Marcus Aurelius attempted to live virtuously, following Stoic principles. Unlike many Roman emperors, he did not indulge in the many pleasures he had access to, like getting drunk on wine and watching sadistic games in the Colosseum. Marcus Aurelius wanted to fulfill the task fortune had given him, which was serving humanity. So he cared deeply about fulfilling his purpose. But to do so, he had to care less about the things that aren't worthy nor wise to care about. And these things are many. One of the essential concepts in Stoicism is the schism between things we control and do not control, which Epictetus and Caridian explain so clearly. Most, if not all things, beyond our own actions are not up to us. Does that mean that we should renounce the world? Not necessarily, but the Stoics believed that we should be realistic about our limited influence on these things and that we create an unnecessary burden for ourselves if we aren't. When life hurts, it often means that we care about things we have no control over, and by doing so, we let them control us, play with us like puppeteers. Then we blame the puppeteers for pulling our strings, while in actuality, we allow them to do so. But if we stop caring about them, they lose power over us and will be undisturbed. For Marcus Aurelius, being unperturbed by things outside of his control allowed him to cope with the many responsibilities and challenges he faced as an emperor, and to focus on tasks he believed he was given by the god. For Epictetus, it meant freedom. For other people, not being moved by external forces or a selection of them could be a way to focus on goals that do matter. And for others, it could simply be a path to a happy, carefree life. When life hurts, what are the things we should stop occupying ourselves with, and how do we do it? This video is an exploration and free interpretation of Marcus Aurelius' philosophy on how to care less about things that aren't worth caring about. By the way, you'll find more Stoic wisdom in this book, Stoicism for Inner Peace, which contains my collected works on remaining calm and focused in these challenging times. You'll find a link in the description. In his meditations, Marcus Aurelius repeatedly differentiates between present, past, and future. In each category, the ancient Roman Empire has valuable things to say about how we either care too much about them, or in the wrong ways, or about the wrong things. For clarity and structure, this essay is subdivided into these categories, starting with the future. As Seneca once stated, we suffer more in our imagination than in reality, implying that our thoughts are the source of our suffering. When we look into the future, our imagination often goes wild, inventing countless scenarios of what could happen, but probably never will. Beforehand, we think of ways to handle possible outcomes while shivering because of the idea of not knowing how the future will eventually play out. In some instances, what happens is what we anticipate, but in many other instances, fortune surprises us, overwhelming us with events we couldn't have anticipated. For example, we could have spent years preparing for a well-earned retirement, only to receive right before the first day of our twilight years a deadly cancer diagnosis that gives us just a few months to live. The possibility of such events leads many to continuous worry. The best could happen, but the worst as well. And what if the Third World War breaks out? What if I lose all my money? Such adverse outcomes are very well possible, but as long as they aren't happening in the present, we cannot deal with them, as these events simply aren't happening, at least not yet. They only exist in our thoughts. The future only bothers us because we think about it as it does not exist outside the mind. Marcus Aurelius wrote that it's not the weight of the future pressing upon us, but that of the present alone. It's not the future that hurts us, but how we deal with it in the present. The misery of the future happens in the present, and ironically, it's not the future unfolding in the present, as when we encounter it, it's already present. The misery of the future is our worrying about it. Now, when we care too much about future events, life eventually begins to hurt as we suffer them in our imagination, letting them dictate our present. So what does Marcus Aurelius say about caring too much about the future? First, let's consider the following quote. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. He pointed out that if he could cope with the present, he could also cope with the future. He told himself not to picture everything dreadful that could happen, but instead stick with the situation.